grim. That's how it looks.
I'll take Grim right now.
I am the Grim Reaper.
It's grim.
The bosses are good.
And make it grim.
A grim tale indeed.
It's a little grim. Meaningless and grim. It's the grim.
It's Grim.
Pretty grim, huh?
Things look grim.
Evening all. How you doing? Hello, lovelies. All right. This was all a bit last minute, so hopefully we'll do okay. But I had the opportunity tonight to sit down and talk to two of the people behind the new Pioneer game project coming out from Mongoose Publishing and built on their Traveller engine. I will leave telling you more about it to the people involved. So let's get on with it and bring them in.
Hey there.
All right. Good evening. How about you give us a quick little introduction to the project and who you are?
Okay, well, I'm Sandy Antunes, one of the co-authors of Pioneer, which is loosely connected to the Traveller universe from Mongoose, but it's its own thing about going into space right now and for the next few decades. So inspired by movies like The Martian, it's players versus environment, with all the coolness of space and the fact that space is trying to kill you.
And Chris?
Yeah, I'm Pioneer's lead developer. I'm a writer at Mongoose, and I came into this project a little later, but it was also co-written by Geir Landeskog and myself. And Sandy started it off, and the whole idea is to use the Traveller mechanics to create a role-playing game that's based on the next epic of space travel. And as Sandy pointed out, it's very much Pioneer versus environment, not it's not about combat and some of the things you see in many traditional role-playing games. It's more about the challenges of space travel.
There's a question I ask of everybody if I get the chance, which is, how did you get into tabletop games? So Chris first this time.
Okay. I was introduced by the gateway drug that so many people come in on, Dungeons and Dragons, when I was probably 12 years old or something like that. And I probably only played 2 or 3 sessions when I started asking the question, is there a space opera science fiction version of this? Because that would be better. And I went to the local hobby shop, which was where they had games back then. And I saw the little black books in the elegant box with the free trader Beowulf saying on the cover. And I immediately got it. And it was Traveller. I've played many role-playing games, but Traveller has always been the nexus to which I return through its many incarnations.
Yeah. Sandy?
All right, so 11 years old, started Boy Scouts, and the older scouts decided to run a D&D game with like 20 of us. So just 20 generic dwarves. And I fell asleep during it and then woke up the next morning. They told me what had happened to my character. So I was like intrigued, went to a game shop, and there was this little black box saying, Mayday, Mayday, free trader Beowulf. And the Traveller box set just looked like something that I was totally going to vibe with. And I picked it up and was just like suitably amazed.
I'm always curious because I'm a bit of an odd duck in that I didn't start with D&D, but it sounds like both of you just migrated to Traveller pretty quickly. So.
Well, I got introduced by D&D, but Traveller was the first game I bought. And, you know, part of the fun of old Traveller was character creation was its own little mini game, and you could die during character creation. So you could do a lot of solo play before you even got to a session.
Yeah, I had the old computer game, the Traveller one, which had a character generator on the front, and you could just use that to generate characters, which was quite a lot of fun, actually. All right, so you describe Pioneer as 10 to 30 years ahead and grounded in plausible science. Are there any specific real world sort of mission concepts that you took as base assumptions for the setting? Like, what level of optimism are we talking about here? Like NASA, Werner von Braun in the 50s, or a SpaceX press release? Well, yeah.
So that's like up to you to dial up, because I'm like more of a hope punk kind of person, but your intro is like grim, grim, grim. And if you want to do grim, dark space, then, you can go for it. It's player versus environment and discovery. And the challenge can also be competing against other teams, or it can be everyone collaborating together. So it's really like make your own vibe. I'd say we're going with kind of a straight, International Space Station default, sort of a neutral vibe for the beginning, so that, people can get right into doing cool discoveries and trying to come up with clever solutions as space is trying to kill them and all the fun stuff like that. But, it's a toolkit, and people can dial up the dark as much as they want.
Anything to add, Chris? Or...
Oh, yes, plenty. It's what Sandy says is great. All I can do is really add to that is that it is there isn't a setting type. There's not an environment. We're not giving you a history or anything like that. We have looked at the science, and we know where we believe rocketry and space travel is going, and the technologies that will be available to transfer to other worlds and other places throughout the solar system. And we give you the tools to create that story. Where you want to take that is largely up to you. Now, that said, the game accurately represents the dangers. If you can tell a narrative and be a merciful referee and let the story go to a direction that is hope punk. I like that term, Sandy. That's new to me. Or you can let the dice determine reality, and people are going to die. Space is dangerous. There are a lot of mishaps that can happen, and we may see that in reality. A mission to Mars right now, the dangers they'll face with the radiation, the physical hardships that the body goes through we don't even know. We haven't really seen people go through some of these experiences. Just the dangers with equipment and the dangers of facing an environment like the moon or Mars. It is very possible we say it's a humans versus environment story. Well, the environment can kill you.
I was very influenced by just in science fiction in general, by the short story, The Cold Equations, which is basically someone stows away on a messenger ship, and so they don't have enough fuel. So either the pilot or the girl stowaway is going to have to die. That's the cold equation. There's no cleverness that you can do around it. And that's like a great role-playing hook when you get into this. Of course, being an RPG, maybe the players can pull something out of a hat.
So I have to keep looking over here because I scribbled down my questions really quickly. Right. So Traveler DNA is clearly present in the system, but Pioneer is positioned as a standalone world, I guess. What design elements, if any, did you feel that you had to rethink or revisit from Traveler, which, I mean, it's developed over time, but it was originally rooted in a very 70s and 80s vision of science fiction. And did you feel at all constrained by the relatively low fidelity of a 2D6 system? I guess this is more a Chris question.
I wouldn't say so. One way that we deliberately constrained it is there is no combat system. Your character could come from a military background, and combat is a skill. And if combat occurs, if some violent situation occurs in the game, you resolve it more or less abstractly using your skill, and then get back to the story, which is more about you working with your team, you're working with your agency or company, competing against others, getting from place to place in the solar system and facing the challenges there. Other than that, we kept the task system completely intact, and many of the mechanics are the same. Spacecraft construction is completely different because these are not traveler spacecraft, or hand-wavium science, and they're a lot of fun, and they hail to various types of space opera, but we're dealing with real world orbital mechanics and aerospace engineering here as best we can represent that in an interesting way.
And then we also added on, because the versus environment is there, so we want to get away from binary succeed, fail, or try again. So when you do fail on something, you roll a d6, and 1 to 4, it failed because you failed. The classic game thing of you just weren't able to do it. But on a 5 or 6, the situation got worse. Equipment failed, a component failed, or an outside cause kicked in. And so where you had 1 problem, now you have 2 problems. And we even have, an escalation suggestions for how different things can fail in wonderfully elegant ways to make the problem there. And that really helps with the environment part, because it's not just I'm not good enough. It's, wow, space is hard. And this is going to take a little bit more effort.
Right. What do we do next? We have something's happened, equipment has failed, or I made a mistake in this tough environment. What do we do to recover from that? What resources can we lean on, including our own skills, our own ingenuity, help from back home, which could be a time lag of 15 to 22 minutes. There are a lot of challenges to face.
And it makes failures fun, because the failures add to the story then.
Yes, as they do. And you should never feel shame for failing. The dice determine that, and it reflects reality. Accidents happen, there are challenges come up, and instead of, oh, how terrible, I feel so foolish. No, this is part of the process. And now what's the next thing you can do to to get out of this situation, or to make the most of it, or to get things back on track, for that matter.
Yeah. So space itself, then, rather than aliens or conspiracies, is the main source of the danger and the excitement. You've kind of answered these questions, I think, already about this, but keeping tension going on a campaign without leaning on genre cliches or the relative tactical focus and depth of combat does seem a bit tricky. Like, role engineering to fix the life support doesn't have the same bite. But as you've said, when you fail can have a different kind of nature. So that covers that a bit. And I was going to ask about, can't mission control help you? So isn't there always an expert on hand to help you out? And doesn't that take some of the sting out of it? I don't know that there's much more to say on that.
And yet we're in an era where people are getting stranded on space stations due to ground operations, etc.
That just happened this week with the Chinese astronauts stuck on their space station. Despite automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, and everything else, like you mentioned, Sandy, they're still there, and they're in a situation that could be a viable pioneer scenario.
Wow. Redundancy costs mass, so it's hard to build it in. So Pioneer aims for realism without the clutter of overly complicated rules. I think Traveler's always been a fairly sort of slim but deep system. But how do you strike the balance between complex simulationist accuracy and fast table play? I think a lot of gamers of a certain vintage will remember Fire, Fusion, and Steel, and how some of the equations were printed wrong, which didn't help matters. So is there a particular point between those poles that you're aiming for, and how do you think you angled towards that?
Well, it leans towards abstracting a lot of the technical material. You have the option to use an appendix if you want to do some of the more complex maths and get more involved in that through that avenue. But generally speaking, you're given with the equipment, with the environment descriptions, there's a lot of detail presented, but we're trying to do it in a way that's not overwhelming and that gets you back into the story. So I guess the idea is you should feel like you are when you're solving these problems, you should feel as if you are successfully solving an aerospace engineering, orbital mechanics, electrical engineering, or other type problem without actually having a degree in those fields, and with a modicum of information from the text to help feed the narrative and make you understand what happened. I think the game will, if you come to it from a very scientific or engineering background, you're going to bring a lot to it, and you may want to get into the equations and solve some real problems that are more complex. If you come from it from more of a layman's position, like myself, it's going to be more of it's going to pique your interest. If you already had an interest in space and you want to know more, I can't think of much of a better avenue than playing a role-playing game that isn't pedantic about it, but just gets you involved in the science and the engineering of it, and you learn as you go.
And a lot of it is like, what pieces do you have in play? Because you won't have everything when you're up in space. It's too expensive. And so, you're going to be limited in air, in power, in time. Time's a big one. The intro scenario is, hey, your tourist craft is in trouble and you're not highly trained people because the pilot's out. But you have to then decide, well, do we repair or do we try a rendezvous with another ship? Is there enough resource to do that? There's a ticking clock going on. You're like, oh, well, we'll just do an EVA. Well, it takes time to go through the airlock. And so that advances the clock suddenly. And you're like, oh, I forgot a tool. It takes time to go through the airlock.
and a solar flare hits.
Yeah, and the solar flare hits. So these things, start to stack up to cause delightful chaos.
And on a macro scale, you'll be able to choose from different technologies, some of them more in a prototype stage. For example, if you want to go to Mars, you can use chemical rockets. It's going to take you 6 to 9 months. And there are various complications associated with that, such as not having any fuel when you get there. Either it could be waiting for you in a situation like Mars Direct, or you could go use in situ resource utilization, as in what SpaceX is planning. You could take nuclear thermal rockets. You could use those to get there, which purportedly will take you 3 to 5 months, I think, which it's more efficient. You get more thrust, or more impulse rather, but you're riding a radioactive candle. And there are a lot of cautions you have to take in that once you fire up that fission drive, you can never take that thing anywhere near a space station, but it's a viable mode of transit. Then there's more other technologies such as nuclear electric propulsion, and ones further down the road like pulse plasma propulsion. So you have these options that you can involve your pioneers in the mission planning. How quickly do we want to get there? What risks are we willing to take? You could involve corporate politics in that decision-making, diplomacy. There are a lot of aspects to it that you can explore to whatever depth you like.
Yeah, so there's always a degree of push your luck game in this as well, Ben.
Sandy, did you ever feel like you were pushing for more fidelity and realism and being pushed back by the game concerns, or were you happy to go along with it? We actually have a former rocket scientist in my regular Meat Space group, and he's pretty fine with most things. Just occasionally gets a bee in his bonnet about mathematics or something and won't let it go.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is why I like doing co-writing kind of stuff, because I'm the rocket scientist for the writing half. And so you kind of need pushback, because we want everyone to feel like an engineer in there, but as math-free as possible. So like Chris mentioned, there's an appendix for people that really want to go into crunch. But generally, you're doing something, you have to change orbits. The question is, do you have enough fuel or not enough fuel? And then after you do it, do you now have not enough fuel to do it again? Or, how are your margins going? So really the narrative part. And again, the granularity of Traveler is pretty good with that.
Does the rescue mission have to call for a rescue mission?
Sounding a bit Event Horizon there. So that kind of answers that. And that. You're anticipating my questions. It's very good. All right. So, from the looks of it, you've cast your net a little bit wider than just astronauts. The best of the best. It seems to also involve.
I mean, yeah, like
things
literally, your starting character can simply be rich or media.
Well, yeah. So you could be an influencer, a billionaire, an engineer, military background, civilian astronaut, media personality. There's all of these options. I notice also that billionaires are in the first sort of scenario tester thing that you've put out. There's no nice way to put this, so I won't. Musk and Bezos are not seen in a particularly good light these days. Richard Branson, slightly better. It's been a bit distressing, honestly, to see space getting smeared with all of their other sins. Do you directly deal with any of that? Do you avoid talking about any of that? How do you cope with the Musk problem?
We made fictitious companies that some of them can look like a stand-in for current companies. Some are extrapolating. We internationalize things a lot more to get around the current US and China-centric space development. So yeah, if you want to put a likable billionaire or an unlikable billionaire in space, that's a toggle the GM can play with. But we didn't want to tie it to current companies like SpaceX because we knew that over time they might fail or the meta might change. So it's kind of like we departed our future from there. So.
Yeah, you can see, we're well aware of the developments that have occurred in space technology. And unfortunately, a few of their CEOs get some negative attention. However, there are a lot of space startups where, at least thus far, their CEOs have stayed out of the limelight and are just focused on the science. There's Firefly, there's Sierra Space, there's United Launch Association. There are a lot of companies trying to get into this market and compete in this next age of space exploration that are really focused on what they should be focused on. So you can take it any direction you want. If you want to have your space company have a egotistic billionaire in charge, you can do that. It could add to the narrative, or you can make it really kind of driving maybe a small startup that's trying to compete with the other ones. Or you can get away from that altogether. But yeah, the scenario with the billionaires in space, what would you do, Grim? Would you go rescue them? Because one of them has a dog.
Well, dogs have a long history of being killed off in space. Poor old Laika, So I think sometimes sacrifices are in order for the greater good.
I gotcha.
I may be reading too much into this, but part of the character advancement in the sort of press release material, it seems to suggest mentoring a new generation is an important part of the game. Does this mean that there's like a generational mechanic through a campaign structure? Like one of the first releases is going to be a Mars colony, I believe. So could you play that over generations of descendants from the first colonists, or even a generation ship, if you wanted to extrapolate even further? Or am I reading too much into it?
No, that's intentional because, say there's a mission to Titan, and it's like, okay, mission to Titan, and with all the travel times and all, if that's a 20-year round trip, generation's going to have to come in for that. There's only so many long hauls you can do. And yeah, for Mars, doing a generational campaign would be awesome.
Yeah, you could have the first trip there, and then the successor goes at some later date. So the mentor successor mechanic has, I can think of two main functions for it. One is it adds continuity to your campaign, and another is your protagonist, your first character, could go through a lot of hardships and end up experience or taking on too many wounds, too much radiation, or too much damage, or even something, within the narrative could affect their ability to make future voyages into space. Looking at the astronauts that go today, they go on a limited number of missions, and there's a reason for that. And so the probability that your first pioneer that goes to the moon to help establish the first moon base to also be the one to go to Mars to set up a colony there is unlikely, or to Titan, as Sandy mentions. The other aspect of it is influence. We've got a mechanic for influence. It doesn't make sense to give cash as a reward to characters in this story, so we added in influence, which is something you can use to alter a mission or to get a position on a crew that you want to be on, several things. And you can pass your influence along to help position your successor as well. So
Grim, do you want to be the mayor on the moon base? We could figure that out in the game.
I wrote a game called Colony Moon, which is you're basically playing different factions, politicizing around the best way to take the colony, inspired by The Moon is a Harsh Mistress.
Great novel.
And it strikes me that you could use that at one level of the game and then play Pioneer to actually deal with whatever problems they've ordered things to be done about. So that would be a nice fit for sort of layered play. I'm seeing a lot of possibilities.
You could probably directly run The Moon is a Harsh Mistress with Pioneer.
Yeah. Group marriages and everything. So circling back around to the spacecraft construction, you said that's very different. I think it says that there's modular spaceship construction, and that sounds quite sort of central to the idea here, and it reflects what we've seen on things like the ISS and so on. And it also sounds a lot less crunchy than some of the spaceship construction in various iterations of Traveller. So where is it in the sort of crunch scale? Is it more towards the narrative end? Was it a way of capturing some realism without getting overly complicated?
We're avoiding a super complicated or direct system. It's more like guidelines that you can use to create these systems. And we explain that you're going to have different kinds of rockets. The first one's a launcher, the other one's a transfer vehicle. Generally speaking, the only way we're currently escaping the Earth's gravity well is by getting up there on a chemical rocket. There are other ways to get to space, but we're not anticipating. Well, for example, centrifugal launches. You can't do that with a human; they get turned into paste. There are space planes is an idea as well. I don't know, Sandy. Do you see that as something that's being developed in a major way, or?
Well, it's like what you were saying earlier. If you break up the segments, so you're not one vehicle to go from here to the moon, but you have get to low Earth orbit and trade off to the moon run and have a lander. There's design possibilities.
Landers, capsules, space planes. We get into that a little bit as well with one of the designs. So there are options to guide you into the creation of a spacecraft. But it's not at all like Traveller, because the intention is completely different. For one thing, you really want to minimize your time out there. You want to get to your destination. You don't want to, in a science fiction game, you want to hang out on the ship. It's you don't worry about radiation or anything else. But in Pioneer, in actual space travel, you need to get through the danger that is space. Once you get outside, you've got the Van Allen belts that are a threat close to Earth, and once you get past the magnetic field, you're directly exposed. Going to Mars, for that reason, is we want to shorten that trip, because of every moment you're out there is more danger.
Mm-hmm. And we have 3 eras, basically the next few decades for getting a foothold, a middle era where there's starting to be bases and such made, but sparse, and then a later era where you would actually have the permanent or semi-permanent base on Mars and such. So, it evolves over time as well.
Yeah, and there's a good mechanic for building both space stations and bases, and it's it's really cool. It's modular, so it's almost like putting Legos together. People are gonna have a lot of fun with it, and we're having the artist design it we're picking an isometric angle to show each piece, so you can almost imagine connecting the pieces as well.
Sweet. Just quickly, how much time have you two got to talk?
I can go on if you like.
All right. We'll go until I run out of questions, and then see if anyone in the chat has anything to ask. So the first full campaign is going to be humanity's submission to Mars. Have you grounded that in current mission architecture proposals or old ideas that have been discarded, or
Both?
Both. So is it pretty wild, or is it fairly still constrained?
They will have a lot of options based on the technology that we anticipate being available, plus prototype and early prototype technologies that they could put to use. We're giving pioneers enough rope to hang themselves with. You have the options, as Sandy said. You're sort of being given the chance to push the limits, or you can say, "Hey, this is an interesting role-playing scenario. I want to see if I can do it successfully. Can I follow this game's narrative and successfully be the first mission to Mars?" And once we're there are things to do. So there won't be a whole lot of hand-wavium. We're trying to base this on what's possible and what we anticipate is going to be possible within the next couple of decades.
Yeah. My sweet spot in game design is to aim for what's plausible rather than necessarily realistic or too fantastical. What passes muster. You mentioned The Martian earlier. I think some people have some criticisms of that film, but is that the sort of feel, creative problem solving like that?
That's definitely one of the cores of it, is that. But we also, people could run a later campaign that's more like The Expanse, where it's less about the crunchy tech and more about the pieces that are in play. Because again, it's a toolkit in the end. It's not prescriptive.
Yeah, and you can add to it. Traveler is very flexible for you to add in your own.
The main uniqueness is that it's really players versus environment versus so that kind of survive and thrive is a core part.
Yeah, and that said, there will be narrative flourishes. You want this to have a sort of cinematic quality. I'm not saying it's going to be a telenovela in space, but you have the option to add as much drama and that sort of thing as you like, and the game encourages you to do so with various random encounters and things like that to enhance the experience and make it a narrative that you would love to read or watch on a TV show or movie.
I was rereading Footfall by Niven and Pornell recently, and I just wondered, are you as disappointed as I am that they've used the name Orion for the for the new moon missions when it used to be the nuclear pusher craft?
Yeah, the nuclear bombs tossed under a styrofoam. Yeah.
Is that an option?
I'd say like every 5 years, someone launches a satellite with the name Hermes, and it's like, okay, retire that name like a jersey and move on.
Yeah, they really got to get more original with the namings. Although, much as I'm not a personal fan of his, I did like Musk going to Ian Banks to name a couple of the boosters from a couple of the ships from the Culture. He used their names, which are really, if you've read any of Banks' Culture novels, the ship naming is really crazy. And he used a couple from some of the early SpaceX boosters that were being tested. And I was happy to see that author get a nod. But yeah, no, I'm not going to call any out directly, but you're right. They should get a little more with the spacecraft naming.
I like the ship names from Ringworld as well, the Hot Needle of Inquiry. And things like that.
And
those
there's
are quite
one
good.
advantage is, since we have all these startup rocket companies in the book, if people want to get whimsical and culture-like with the names, that's historically supported.
I think the problem with Greco-Roman mythology is that dealing with all the moons on Jupiter and Saturn has used up all the names. There's none left.
All of them.
Yeah. Let's see. So you've got your 3 eras. Are you planning like a meta plot, a canonical march of history through the books? Like, will there be a canonical version of the Mars base, or are you leaving it wide open?
Leaving it open, but that said, we haven't written books down the road yet. My goal is I want someday to write a Titan mission to Titan, which we've talked about, and if that's going to happen, the other stuff will have already happened. Do we refer to as you're making your way out there? Are you in radio communications with the well-established Mars colony at this point, or what has happened in the past? You have to, if you're going to make your setting immersive, you're going to have to make that decision, unless you ran those sessions already and it exists in your campaign. That said, we're not creating with Traveler, we have a very well-established setting. We're not planning on doing that with Pioneer so much as just giving you the tools to do it for your gaming group.
So like Expedition the Titan won't say, you must have played the Mars book before this, but it may start out with something saying, we are presuming that there is a Mars base that, for this part of the scenario. Use the one from the Mars book, or here's a 1-paragraph summary if you don't.
Precisely. Mm-hmm.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing what players do and what, fan stuff comes out for different campaigns and directions. Because some people will lean into the fun tech problem-y kinds of stuff, and other people are going to be like, all right, assuming that the Earth's military have secret bases already, kind of thing. I'm sure there'll be a Cthulhu in space that someone puts in at some point to go for a Ventura.
Yeah.
Or what's the proto-molecule or something like that.
But no aliens was like one of our core things. The core books are going no aliens. There's no super alien magic technology uber plot that's going to come in.
Microbes on Mars, though?
There could be life in space, but there's not going to be alien MacGuffins in the core books.
And you could decide that they find it, as well as immense underground aquifers or other things that we're currently expecting to look for and hopefully find on Mars.
You could literally merge into the main Traveler timeline by just, was it 2078 that a jump drive was found in the asteroid belt or something? And
was it 20 or 21? I can't remember, but yeah, you could say that we did, we had to use normal physics all along, and then suddenly we have reactionless drives.
Yeah, it's the Gateway books, the Heechee saga, where they find the Gateway asteroid with all the Heechee ships in it.
Yep, that you push a button and it goes somewhere and you have no idea.
Yeah, and you don't know where. You don't know if you're going to be able to come back. That's its own kind of fun, I think.
That gives me an idea. I totally want to do Pioneer with prisoners in space. So we're locked in to do a mission, because that's a standard sci-fi trope.
Do you envision Pioneer focusing more on the mission-based play, which reflects the nature of actual space travel at the moment? It seems like the more open-ended play will kind of be fairly limited to the colonization missions. As you say, people don't want to spend that much time in space unless they can be properly shielded by a whole bunch of regolith or a big tank full of recycled water. So how do you see that as a problem or a boon to games masters?
Narratively speaking, there are reasons that you get out on a Mars buggy and you have to go from one place to another, and then you're in another nice 3 meters deep of regolith to protect you from radiation. But despite what the realities might be, we are going to want to drive things in a direction that makes for an exciting narrative. So hopefully that answers the question. But
it's not prescriptive. The players will do what they want. If they want to do Heinlein's The Menace from Space, where the biggest issue is a space tourist is taking the guide's boyfriend, that could be a fun scenario.
You were asking earlier what makes an exciting scenario when you have these certain limitations. Well, one thing that I've always encountered is it's player interaction and interaction with NPCs. As long as you have interesting characters, that can be a very large focus of your session, constrained as it is to near future space travel. So put your characters in your game, have a nice gaming group, and I think you'll have a good narrative.
That kind of leads into my next question. Yeah, character interactions are interesting. Of course, in real space missions, everyone undergoes psychological examination to make sure they can all get on with each other, hopefully. So that's something you'd probably have to make an exception for to keep things interesting in the game. But were there any other popular misconceptions or technological misconceptions you came up against while you were working?
So, like, we're seeing space becoming more democratized. As more missions go, they're not going to be the astronaut who was a PhD and ex-military pilot who also has gone through psychological screening. It's going to be a smaller company like, well, we got a bunch of candidates and ran them through, and these are the best, and that's all our budget covers. So let's see how things go. So it will be, it can be all the brilliant, super competent mavericks, but that's not always going to be the case. And I mean, you look at the space tourism flights now, and anyone can go up into space.
Yes, anyone. Anyone. Katy Perry, right? That's the one we often think of. But you mentioned the psychology exams and the rigorous efforts they make to ensure that they're putting people up there that can get along and that can handle being in space in a tiny area together for extended periods of time. We would assume with the amount of money being spent on these missions that it would always have worked. Well, it hasn't always worked. There have been problems with that. There are recorded instances. Okay, they're vague on the reason, but from what I understand, there have been actual situations where individuals could not get along with each other in a spacecraft, and they were forced to end missions early because of this and send one or more of them home.
Chris and I had talked about a book. Was it Life on Mars by Zach Wiener-Smith?
City on Mars. Yeah.
Yeah, where he talks about some of the negatives. And one thing he points out is astronauts lie. They lie so that they can get into space. They are always healthy. They have no psychological conflicts with anyone else on the team because they want to go to space. So even historically, the screenings work to a point, but people want to go into space and they're going to do what they want to do. And then they're going to bring a corned beef sandwich and it's going to shred in this spacecraft and cause trouble.
Or Homer Simpson with the potato chips and the ant colony.
Floating around in your spacecraft, yeah.
Yeah. I'm reminded of that case with I think it was a Russian Antarctic research station where the guy got appendicitis, but he was the surgeon.
Yeah,
or the
medic himself with no anesthesia.
Yeah, just vodka. So things like that can be an interesting problem that can arise. Have you included information on the sort of day-to-day nitty-gritty of living in space, like how the toilets work, the fact that the skin on your feet comes loose once you've been in zero gravity for a long time, all of those little things?
Not in great detail. We kind of gloss over some of that. These things happen. There are lists that talk about the various conditions that you will deal with. But does it make for a good role-playing scenario? Probably not. Do you need to be aware of it? Yes. But trying to avoid things that are going to be too much caught in the minutia.
Right. Yeah. We want things that are more drama. So not, oh no, my skin's flaking off and I'm itchy, but more, I had to rush the airlock sequence, so now I have the bends.
Or my eyeballs are reshaping and I need glasses. I need a new glasses prescription. I mean, yeah, these are things that happen and we talk about it, but yes, we want to focus more on the stuff that's going to be key to your narrative.
I think if the toilet breaks down, that would be quite important, though.
I think that's a whole 3 to 4 hour session that you can run, and I am less than half kidding.
Or worse, we had to take parts from the toilet to fix the control system.
Now what?
I think there was the case where one of the first times a woman went into orbit, they gave her way too many products, feminine hygiene products. I dread to think how much mass allowance that used up in the end. Did any elements from experience or reading on the background of the aerospace industry, did it inspire any of the mechanics or the fiction? Can you point to any particular incidents or anything that really, grabbed your attention?
So I'm going to say one thing that actually happened on a satellite project I was on, observing satellite, and it gets into space and it has to open the door so it can see. And so the question is, do we use a motor to open it, which has a higher failure rate but is reliable, or do we use explosive bolts, which are really, really likely to work and open the door and let the mission continue, but have a slight chance of destroying everything? And then once you start thinking about reliability versus risk, you find out, oh, this is actually an add-on to someone else's mission. So now you have to negotiate with them if you want to do explosive bolts. And they're like, oh, just use a motor. I know it gives higher chance of failure for you, but it's higher chance of success for us. So I actually wanted to keep some of those real-life trade-offs as something that's always in play, that there's not an optimal solution. You're always trying to figure out what you want to take on as a risk budget.
And I think something that happens in games that are at least partly simulationist, which Pioneer has very much got that in its DNA, and Traveler has it too. And you get people who start making suppositions about it. It would never be designed like that. That would be foolish. It would be this. And then they describe this perfect system or this perfect, in Traveler, suit of powered armor, or in Pioneer, this perfect lander. Decisions are made. We're humans, and we make decisions based on politics, based on preference, based on emotion, based on I got promoted to the manager of this project, and it's my pet aspect to have explosive bolts or something like that. Bad decisions, or maybe not bad decisions, but decisions that will affect how things go are made, and things may not end up optimal.
And remember, like, mil-spec sounds really cool, but mil-spec met the minimum specifications and was the cheapest.
Yes, I love reminding people of that. But at least it's in tactical black.
That's actually part of the fun with the tech is because you can do experimental tech, you can be like, oh, you all can use the standard spacesuits. I'm using my enhanced fancy one because I have influence and pull.
It could be part of the story.
And you can't even steal it because they're tailor fit.
The referee has the ability to put their thumb on the scale if it seems ridiculous for the narrative. But yeah, you want to give people the influence to be able to get their... Every point of influence is a kilogram of material brought into space, that sort of thing.
It's a lot of roast beef sandwiches.
If that's what you want, you can spend your influence on that. And I'm sure it will for the narrative.
So what really grabbed my attention and drew me to be interested in talking to you and talking about the project was something you just mentioned, this simulationist angle. It has been out of favor in the RPG industry for about a decade at this point. And I am sensing a bit more of a hunger for more simulationist material. Like Alexander McCrease's Adventurer Conqueror King goes deep into the crunch. It's not necessarily realistic, but it's got all kinds of options. So it's interesting that you're coming out with this at this time. Were you aware of the environment? In the broader RPG
part of the zeitgeist, I guess.
Yeah, not really.
The time has come.
No, just we've already got a lot of very narratively focused at Mongoose Publishing. We've got many narratively focused games that that do get away from the crunch, and even Traveler, which is a science fiction game, we try to keep make crunch optional. This game, it's more present, but again, the game is designed to serve both audiences. If you want it, it's there for you to embrace wholeheartedly. If you want something a little more narratively oriented, you can still feel like you're going on an actual space mission and probably learn a few things in the process without fully getting buried in crunch.
I think a lot can be done with how you present the material and how you present the focus to people. Like if you look back to Vampire the Masquerade and the other storyteller games, the systems are not that narratively focused, but all of the advice and the way that the game is presented has that narrative focus. So similarly here, if you're presenting a more science forward sort of attitude in the way it's presented and the artwork and everything else, I think people will pick up on that. And it should work. So,
yeah.
So we did the classic Mongoose Traveler thing of running examples with the same group of NPCs interspersed to give an idea of how things go, which hopefully will give people an idea of how their role can go in it.
Yes.
We got a criticism, a comment from someone in the Kickstarter saying, "Hey, one of the pre-gen PCs is everything they can do, someone else in the group can also do."
Right.
And I thought that was interesting because on one hand, that is a deficit. There's nothing that's uniquely you, but you're the jack of all trades, and that is a role that some people like to play.
And what happens when he's out on a spacewalk and it needs to be done inside the spacecraft?
Exactly.
You need backup guy.
And redundancy and overlap. How like a player group to have that.
Yeah.
I mean,
So Mongoose Traveler or Mong Trav or whatever people are calling it these days, its basis is open or was open. So how expandable is Pioneer intended to be? Are you anticipating, wanting third-party support for other people to come on board?
I don't know if that's in the plan yet, but I hope so. I think it sounds like a great idea. I know a few people who would like to take advantage of that. One of them's right here. Sandy.
I would love to write just the little one-off adventures or something, kind of how Mongoose does stuff for mainstream Traveler. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'd like to see it supported with some, hopefully with some visual collateral that people could use as well. So
that's as an independent publisher, visuals is always the big cost. So materials, page dress, that kind of trade dress, or that kind of thing is always helpful to third parties.
Yeah, so Mongoose actually said no AI in this, no AI art, etc. But third party, I guess depends on their stance as well.
Yeah,
that's a whole other conversation.
That is, we could go on that one for a while. Yeah, that is our policy.
Yeah, I would love for it to be my policy, but I'm not made of money. What would you tell a games master who's more used to cinematic space opera, Star Wars, Starfinder, my own Machinations of the Space Princess, White Star, things like that? How would you advise them to bring it back to a more sort of grounded way of playing?
Oh, Star Wars, just go with the Millennium Falcon from Empire, where they're trying to fix their engine while doing maneuvers, landing on an asteroid to do repairs, but then creatures attack. It's a series of, in the Star Wars universe, very mundane things that's all rooted around, I'm trying to fix this ship, and things are difficult.
Yes, and that's right, and the events that happen around that. Yeah, and maybe you want to shift your influences a little bit to things like we mentioned The Martian or Gravity, or For All Mankind was a show that dealt with an alternate future, alternate past, alternate history story. Ad Astra, Interstellar, even, which of course does go to other stars, but pays some obeisance to actual space technology. Maybe dial your narrative in those directions rather than Star Wars, Star Trek, or other more traditional space opera.
And the usual advice, talk to your players. Make sure that you all have a group player contract on what kind of feel you're going for in the game, and see where they want to go with it.
Are there any stretch goals or companion products that you're particularly excited about? If you can reveal them now.
Well, they're listed in the Kickstarter. There is the Ares Ascendant is the Martian, the Mars campaign, which is being designed and written, and we have the companion has we're calling the companion Mission Control because it's all missions. And most of them were started by Sandy. Actually, he came up with a bunch of good ideas, and then we added some more by kind of brainstorming with other topics we wanted to cover, so that you have a lot of narrative options to go with. And it's not all trips to planets either. It's trips to the L2 Lagrange point to test out a rotating torus with artificial gravity, and what goes wrong on the way there. It's there's a spy satellite to encounter,
or you're at your base and you pick up a strange signal that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And then where does that go? So yeah, Mission Control I'm pretty excited about because it gives people a lot of options to do a one shot or 1 to 3 shot session, and then that same group can then go on and do one of the other ones. And it could be, and it includes a trilogy about settling the moon as well. The choice of where to set up a moon base, competition for those key sites, like where they believe that there's water in the craters that have always been in the dark, and things like that.
And the lava tubes.
Yeah, it's called Project Hecate, and we're creating a special patch for it as part of a stretch goal. So you could get those and award them to your players if they successfully complete all 3 phases of that adventure.
That's a cool idea, and I'm not the only gamer with a battle vest. So I know there's a lot of, especially BattleTech players, for some reason they love their patches. So you could probably make a tidy sum on the side with those. I've done a few crowdfunders in my time, and I've learned a few lessons. I think I know Mongoose has done a lot. How polished and complete and final is the book as you're going into the crowdfunder?
There's a lot of work to be done, but the plan is in place. The core rule book is in great shape. We need to refine it some more, but Mongoose has a great history of delivering on all its projects. We do not fail to get our projects out. That said, it takes some time, but if you pledge for Pioneer, you can rely on the fact that you're going to get it.
And the core rules, they've been out for 2 years. There's been play testing and activity on it. This isn't just like a notion or, hey, we got a rough draft we came up with last week. There's been some development time sunk into this.
And there's actual play available now. We put out an actual play of the first adventure scenario that's included in the core rulebook. So you've got that to take a look at as well to get an idea for the feel of it.
Yeah. For people watching, I will put all the appropriate links down below after the stream's finished. So hang around and you'll see them shortly afterwards. What's the weirdest, wildest, most plausible near future tech that you either did include or wanted to include? Like, do we have fusion yet? That's always 20 to 50 years away. Do we have fusion in the game?
It remains 20 to 50 years years. If fusion remains 20 to 50 years in the future. No, there's no fusion. There's no indication that that's going to be available, so it's not included. What is included?
Some of the medical stuff that we hypothesize could come up to make space more survivable and also to augment people. We have little bits on that I think that's kind of a really cool area, because space medicine's still in its infancy, and it's like, well, we understand deep sea diving and lots of ways to deal with things and atmosphere mixtures and pressures and such, and anti-rad stuff like that. But once you're giving astronauts stuff to survive, it's like, well, what could you give them to boost as well? Either across the board or the illegal performance enhancing kind of.
Well, amphetamines is why we won the Battle of Britain, because we had better quality speed than the Nazis did. So, there's a lot to be said for that. People watching, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments, because I'm coming to the end of my questions, and I don't know how much lag there is. So, all right, personal question. If you could walk on any planet or moon in the solar system, which would you choose and why?
Ooh.
For me, it's Titan. I'm fascinated by that planet, and
I think because it may have liquid water.
Yeah, it's ammonia oceans. I am fascinated with that moon.
One big hydrocarbon slushy.
Yeah, I would be fascinated. What would the space suits look like? You actually be dealing with a spacecraft that needs to deal with atmosphere. You have re-entry to deal with, which is not. Well, it's the case on Mars too. It's just a very, very, very thin atmosphere, but it's a real part of the challenge at Titan. I find that moon very fascinating, and that's where I'd like to set foot if I could.
Yeah.
You too, Sandy?
Oh yeah, Titan. And atmospheres are great. Atmospheres provide some protection from radiation. They give you a pressure environment to work in. And just exploring Titan, figuring out what's going on with it, the solid surface, but the prospect of water.
The other one, though, would, if I can have two,
of course,
way out there.
Why not?
Kind of an off-the-cuff one is Triton, the moon of Neptune. That's way out there and probably beyond the 20 to 30 year scope of this game. But I'm fascinated with the moon Triton. It orbits in the opposite direction of Neptune's other moons. It's got volcanoes that shoot ice into not into the air. There isn't any. Out from they're like ice geysers. It's a very interesting place, and I don't know. I would like to set foot there too if I can.
For me, I'd like to be in a permanent space station orbiting Earth. The idea of spending, my eventual retirement years in zero gravity outside of the Earth, and it's very, very appealing.
After they develop the meds that accommodate for the gravity issues and all that, or just you're spinning.
There's a lot you can deal with if you don't plan to come back.
That's true.
There was a science fiction story about very old rich people sort of going to space because it was less strain on their bodies or something. I wish I could remember what it was. I would choose Europa for two reasons. It does seem like a good prospect for life, so I'd love to poke around there. And also, there was an old science fiction art book called Thomas Cook's Galactic Tours, and it advertised skiing on Europa, which looked like a lot of fun in the low gravity.
Does it have mountains tall enough?
I don't know. I imagine you could push yourself quite a long way.
That's true. You could do cross country at the very least.
Oh yeah, someone could set up a lunar golf course and tourists there. That would be a very fundable opportunity.
All right, give me the elevator pitch for the game and the Kickstarter. Come on, convince everybody.
All right. Pioneer is a game that enables you to participate in the next great age of space travel, whether you are a hardcore crunch game lover or a casual gamer who just wants to learn more about space and and enjoy a good narrative.
I'd be more like, hey, so do you want to go to space and see if you can survive there and discover really cool things from the comfort of your armchair? Get a bunch of players together and run a Pioneer scenario and see if you can survive and thrive.
I've seen you mentioned some of the comments in the Kickstarter, Sandy. One of them was, I want to go settle Mars before Musk does, stuff like that. People are really excited about the idea of the scenarios of the game.
Yeah, because I mean, part of it is it's players versus environment, but there is the competition thing. Oh, we launched early with a little bit more risk because we want to beat the other team. There is totally a plot point.
Plus, I mean, with the internet, there'll be discussions on Reddit and various internet forums, Mongoose's forums even, about how did your mission to Mars go? Oh yeah, we got killed by a coronal ejection on the way there, or we got there and we ran into a hitch when trying to recreate methalox fuel and couldn't get back, so we just stayed, or we did the whole thing. We got there and back as the mission indicated. There will be fun discussions about it, about what people were able to do and not do, and whether they survived or not as well. I think that'll be a fun communal aspect of the game.
I think the hope side of things, I think that's part of the zeitgeist as well. People are a bit bored of dystopia and grimdark, which is bad news for me, but great news for you. So
there's room for both.
I'm not seeing any questions pop up, but I can pass on any if they turn up later.
Or they can post them at the Kickstarter in the community.
Yes, they're
forum.
welcome
This is true.
to do that.
Yeah, and I will add the link below. I think that's about it. Is there anything else you think we didn't cover that you'd like to mention?
I think that was fun. Pretty complete. Yeah, it was a very fun discussion. Thanks for having us.
Hey, and anytime. Maybe I'll have you back later when you move on to the next section of the project or whatever. But yeah, it was great talking to you. I've got history with Mongoose back in the day doing freelance and stuff, so it's always nice to look in and see what they're up to. All right,
more coming out after that, so please come around again.
Fantastic. All right, we'll bring it to a close there then. Thanks for watching, everyone, whether live or on the backup. And yeah, links will be below, including to the Kickstarter, and I'll probably post some blogs or something about it as well, so you can get all the information there as well. All right, Thanks, guys. Safe night.
Good night.